I'd like to call to order the Kankakee County Board meeting for July 9th. Today's invocation is from Janice Peters.
God of all creation, we come before you today to give you honor and praise. You are worthy of praise. You are the source of all that is good. You are the source of all our blessings. Thank you for every gift that we have been given. We thank you for the opportunity to come and gather together today. We ask for your hand of blessing on this meeting. We ask that you would guide and direct our meeting so that it's full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. Thank you for helping us accomplish our work and our goals this day. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. We could get a roll call, sir.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Present.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Present.
Mr. Snipes.
Present.
Mr. Byrne.
Present.
Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Peters.
Present.
Mr. Payton.
Present.
Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Ms. Dunbar.
Present.
Mr. Ritter.
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Present.
Mr. Fairfield.
Present.
Mr. Zenz.
Present.
Ms. Haas.
Present.
Mr. Kirko.
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Swanson.
Present.
Ms. Zakulo.
Present.
Mr. Featherling.
Present.
Mr. Donnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
Quorum.
We have quorum. Under public commentary, I have Kim Bacon from Kankakee.
Okay, good morning. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you as the governing board. My name is Kim Bacon, and I am here to address the comments made at last month's criminal justice meeting. I have transcribed Sheriff Downey's exact words at that meeting after he was asked by Mr. Hess if he would like to address the comments made here at last month's board meeting by Margaret Clark and Peggy Slater from the Chicago Religious Leadership Network. Hopefully my statement will clarify any confusion or miscommunication. This entire meeting, along with the criminal justice meeting, is available on YouTube for anyone who wants to watch and listen to it. So for the record, I will read his words here. Mr. Hess asked Sheriff Downey, do you have any comments on the comments you heard yesterday at the county board meeting? And the sheriff's response was, the fact that they used the analogy to our board into our department referenced it as a war. I truly believe that is an insult to every veteran who ever served our country. For them to classify that as a war is ridiculous. I guess the other thing I would say is that there is never a differentiation of who. And a couple of ladies were from Winnetka and Skokie. God bless them for making the trip down to Kankakee. But if they want, and I showed this committee last month, the people we're picking up from the Illinois Department of Corrections. And if they want these people who are getting out of prison, who sexually assaulted a kid under the age of 5 years old, then come out and say it. Don't stand up there and say we need to treat them all the same. Take a stand. If that's what you want, then come out and say it. Then I'm good with it. If that's what you want and that's your opinion, and I respect it. God bless you. But for them to sit there and say that we have to take care of all of them, that's, for them to get up in front of people and say that. They can't mean that. I wouldn't think they do. Then shame on them, because I don't want those people here. And the other thing they forget is that they never used the term illegal. It is illegal. I didn't write the law. Go to Washington, D.C. and change the laws. That's it. It's simple. We've offered, the chairman and myself, we've reached out, we've extended an olive branch and said, we will help in changing our laws if we can. We've offered help. Not once have they called saying, we need your help. We want to work together. So I probably said too much now, so I'll just leave it at that. This opinion is appalling. As most of you know, Connect Kankakee and our affiliation with the faith-based religious leaders here in Kankakee County, no one has ever wanted child sex offenders released in our county. I'm here to take a stand. I'm going to stand up here like Sheriff Downey suggested and make clear, or take a stand and say, no, we do not want violent criminals ever released. But we would like innocent people released. Let's have a differentiation. Let's not treat them all the same. I'd like to give you all a couple of instances where our jail, in cooperation with ICE, separated several families during the Christmas holidays. Jesus Cabrera, his brother, and their employees, who own 2 lucrative Mexican restaurants in Northwest Indiana, were taken into custody at Christmas time. And ICE also deported from a veteran serving 2 tours of Afghanistan for our country, Miguel Perez. I mean, if we're going to say that the women who spoke to this board meeting last month were insulting every veteran by calling the Trump administration's policy a war on immigrants, then actually deporting them from the Jerome Combs Detention Center must also be an insult to veterans. I have here the information on both of these situations, and I will leave it with you to peruse, because I don't think I can stand up here and tell their heartbreaking stories. Again, Miguel Perez from Chicago, and Jesus Cabrera's, his Mexican restaurant called Mexico Lindo, from Portage, Indiana. This type of misrepresentation deliberately meant to divide and malign others is very unfortunate. We must find a way to forward with integrity and respect for all people. Our purpose is to work together, and we have reached out to this board. Jim Rowe, our state's attorney, and many times to Mr. Wheeler as well. We are looking for any common ground. We hosted an immigration symposium with St. Paul's Episcopal Church and Father Israel Anchon, along with Aunt Martha's Illinois Welcoming Center. I have here a copy of our agenda. So we have reached out looking for a humane solution to a problem right here in our area. There is a very positive comment that the sheriff made last month at the criminal justice meeting. He said, and I quote again, "We've offered, the chairman and myself," he said, and I quote, "We've offered, we extended an olive branch and said we will help in changing our laws if we can. We've offered help. So today, on YouTube, we are asking again for you to help in changing our laws. We all want Kankakee to be safe and a welcoming community that grows and thrives because we actually care about every human life, especially the weakest and poorest among us. Please end the contract with ICE because it is inhumane. If difficult issues go unaddressed by responsible leaders, they will be exploited by irresponsible ones." Thank you.
I have Sally Nader.
Morning. My name is Sally Nader. I'm from Wilmette, Illinois. I'm a member of Chicago Religious Leadership Network. And within that group, I'm a member of Congregation Hakafah, which is a Reformed Jewish congregation in Glencoe, Illinois. And in my day job, I'm a psychologist. So why is detaining immigrants wrong? Our government is using cruelty as a tactic to discourage immigration. Jailing immigrants who have committed no other sin other than being an immigrant is cruel. Jailing immigrants who have otherwise done nothing wrong or who've committed the kind of misdeed like not using a turn signal when they should, or turning right on red when they shouldn't, or having a broken tail light, the kind of misdeed that if you or I did it, we would get a fine. Jailing those folks is cruel. Moreover, in using cruelty and specifically jail as a tactic to discourage immigration, all of us who are involved in some way become numb to this over time, and I include myself here too. Jailing immigrants eventually becomes the status quo, and we lose our sense of outrage. I lose my sense of outrage. Outrage gradually morphs into discomfort, and discomfort turns into numbness. Again, I include myself. Unless I speak up, I become oblivious to this wrong. Now, as a practicing psychologist, over the years, I've had clients who have pushed boundaries, who have wanted to do something, wanted to have a session in a coffee shop, or wanted to do something socially, or wanted me to accept an expensive gift. And I've always had to ask myself in those situations, what would my colleagues say if they knew what I was doing? What would they say about my handling of that situation? By analogy, I feel like something similar is happening here. What would my colleagues say if they knew I stood by and said nothing? I think it's important to speak up, and I hope each of you will speak up. Also, I think over time we become numb to the language we use to refer to the undocumented. We call them aliens, and we call the children of the undocumented alien children. If we use these words enough, again, we're just desensitized. Yet words have meaning, and these folks are not aliens as in something resembling E.T., but they're our neighbors to the south, neighbors. One other point, paying for county services with income from jailing our neighbors to the south creates a dependency on this particular source of income. And that dependency becomes a slippery slope until, as you see in some parts of the country, groups vying for multi-million-dollar contracts to jail our neighbors and their children, using convoluted arguments that really defy logic. For example, I've heard the prisons for children in Tornillo and Homestead and Carrizo Springs referred to as summer camps. Convoluted logic. Finally, I'd urge you to reconsider jailing our neighbors to the south. It's cruel. I've been to DC to lobby Congress. I was at Tornillo when the last child left, and I volunteered in El Paso. I'm trying to find ways to help. I'd encourage you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no communications, presentations, or vacancy appointments at this time. Certificates of recognitions, Avelino Arendano from the Corrections Department, 15 years. He's working today. Okay. So the minutes of the last meeting, I need a motion to approve the minutes Mr. Burns, second. Ms. Dunbar, any corrections, deletions, additions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under Claims Committee report, can I get a motion to approve the claims? Mr. Smith, second, Mr. Featherling. If we could get those read into the record, please.
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they've examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants payable out of the funds as follows. General Fund, $1,348,122.23. All other funds, $3,563,504.06, for a total for the month of May 2019, $4,911,626.29. For the Highway Fund, $245,572.87. All other funds, $737,666.76, for a total for the month of May 2019, $983,239.63.
Alrighty, we have a motion and a second. There's no questions, it will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under department reports, can I get a motion to combine and accept the reports as presented? Mr. Olthoff, second. Mr. Swanson, if we could get those read into the record, sir.
The County Collector's Monthly Report for May 2019. Total cash in banks and investments of $17,061,370.22. The County Treasurer's Monthly Report for May 2019. Total in checking accounts and cash, $10,305,709.45. General Fund, a deficit balance of $2,458,172.57. Coroner's Monthly Report for May 2019. Total calls, 102. 16 coroner's cases, 9 autopsies, 9 toxicology, 2 outside autopsies, 2 x-rays, 60 cremations. Coroner's Income Report for May of 2019. Total fees, $10,651.82. The Circuit Clerk Cash Book for May of 2019. Total disbursed, $483,340.10. The Recorder's Monthly Report for May of 2019. Disbursement fees paid to the County Treasurer, $139,391.76. County Clerk's Monthly Report for May of 2019. Total fees, $29,557.54. Animal Control Monthly Report for May 2019. Total funds submitted to the Treasurer, $27,430. The IPTIP Building Fund, $535.72. Total animals handled, 75. The Monthly Resolution Report for July 2019, total to the county, $11,706.
Thank you, sir. We had a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under consent agenda, I'm going to go ahead and pull off the reappointment of Mr. Blair, because since we are spending money, that has to be a separate vote. Is there anybody that has anything else that needs to be pulled off consent? For the second time, anything that needs to come off? Alrighty, I guess we'll take a motion to approve at that point with consent. Mr. Donnell, second. Mr. Fairfield, if we can get those read into the record, sir.
The appointment of Alice Argelian to the Bourbonnais Township Fire Protection District. The reappointment of Steve Worth to the Kankakee River Valley Forest Preserve Commission. The reappointment of David Wolf to the Grinnell Drainage District Board. Holidays to be observed by the offices of Kankakee County for calendar year 2020. Declaration and disposal of surplus and unwanted vehicles for the Kankakee County Coroner's Office.
Sorry, I want to check something out real quick. I thought it was an appointment. I thought this was the first appointment for Mr. Wolf. It is the appointment. That's a Scrivener's error. So it is the initial appointment. This is not a reappointment for Mr. Wolf. It's correct on the resolution, just not on the agenda. Just want to make sure everybody knew that. So, alrighty. So we have a motion and a second. That'll be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess. Mrs. Pope. Mr. Snipes. Mr. Byrne. Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Donnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. For 112, if we could just get the title read into the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, regarding the reappointment of Eric Blair as the Kankakee County Supervisor of Assessments.
Is there a motion on the floor?
So
Sorry, we
moved.
had so many hands. I'll go with Ms. Parker the first time and Mr. Snipes on the second. And George, you're on deck. You'll get the next one. Sorry. Any questions on this? Anyone want to make him sweat? All right. And it'll be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess. Mrs. Pope. Mr. Snipes. Mr. Byrne. Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Donnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under executive, if we can get the title for 113 into the record, please.
Proclamation of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, declaring that a local disaster exists in Kankakee County due to excessive rainfall.
All righty. Does that motion recommendation stand, Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mr. Washington with the motion. Is there a second? We'll go with Mr. Kulo first time. Any questions about this? This is so we don't have to, or I don't have to keep recertifying this every Friday. And I didn't know if people noticed, but the governor did follow up with a disaster declaration for all counties in Illinois after this. So I guess that was a good sign. Maybe someone's listening. So we'll see how that pans out. Usually, and from what I understand in my conversations with a lot of the farm folks, determinations really aren't made until July, August, what that may mean at that point, once FSA and everybody else gets their hands on it. So, so we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? It's a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item, if we can get the title on that one right in.
Ordinance of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, regarding an ordinance allowing the County of Kankakee to be a smoke-free workplace in all Kankakee County building and county vehicles and within 15 feet of entrances, exits, windows that open, and ventilation intakes. This prohibition also applies to the use of electronic cigarettes.
Alrighty, I would need a motion to approve on that one first. Go with Ms. Dunbar, and then Ms. Polk with a second. Is there any questions about this? We went through it in executive extensively. Just want to make sure. Yes, Mr. Snipes.
Yeah, right. I know that we, I think 1990 when I was on the board, I think about 92, we passed a resolution as to no smoking on county grounds. How is this different, or are we just updating?
Well, I can't speak to what was done back then because there was no research done on what that existed. So I apologize of my ignorance on that subject. I do know that through the other research that we have done, the state attorney's office did, we can't do that. There can't be an a smoking ban on all county properties in general. No blanket statement that includes tobacco, chewing, all of that kind of stuff. And so this was what we can do is this resolution reinforces the Illinois, what is it called? The Smoking Act, Smoke-Free Act,
Right.
and then establishes the 15 feet or wherever we want those smoking areas to be. So they don't have to be just at 15 feet. They can be at an appropriate place that's at least 15 feet away from the entrances and posting of the signs. From what I can tell, the signs aren't everywhere, and in some places we weren't 15 feet. And so this kind of reinforces that whole compliance issue, and then allows me and the maintenance director to work on where those areas are going to be.
Okay.
And to Mr. Kinzinger's point, in the committee side of things, he said if it's appropriate, we should look at a shelter at some point if we think that that's something we should do, where depending on where those are at. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yeah, more
Yeah.
more so. But so in county buildings, there should be no smoking. We're not going to have it in the county buildings. It'll still be outside.
Yeah, that's state law,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay, that's what-
It's just we had found that in some places 15 feet wasn't 15 feet. And so we're going to designate where these places are at all of the properties, unless it's under a collective bargain agreement like the health department, where they can't smoke anywhere on the property or in their vehicles, I believe, if they transport clients, I believe is the way the language works, Mr. Beavis. Okay, I got a head nod, so that's the way that works. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second on that one. I guess that would be a voice vote as well. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, 115.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the county board chairman to the eighth amendment to the software license, maintenance, and service agreement with Courtview Justice Solutions.
Motion to approve that one while we're at it. Mr. Hess, a second. Anywhere? Mrs. Haas. We kind of went through that before. Any other subsequent questions? Anything pop in your heads? All right, that one should be a roll call vote then, unless there's any more questions. Roll call, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lejas. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess. Mrs. Pope. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne. Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas. Mr. Kirko. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. All righty, under old business, openings, one opening on the BM Lewis Drainage District, one opening on Gar Creek Drainage, one opening on Mantino number 3 Drainage, one on Mantino number 9 Drainage, one resident opening on the Kankakee County Housing Authority Board, and one opening on the Kankakee County Ethics Commission. So is there any other old business to discuss by the board? Any new business?
I have something I want to.
Yes, Mr. Rowe.
I just want everyone to meet Karen Brown. She's in the back here. She's a new addition to our civil division in the state's attorney's office. We had a vacancy when Graham Quinn left to go work at the AG's office. So Karen comes in. She's already been a big help to our office. She had some previous work history here in the county in the state's attorney's office, so we're very happy to have her back. So please make sure you get to meet her before you leave today.
All right. No, she's been a great help already, and she'll have the misfortune of dealing with me on a regular basis. So, Nancy's like, yes. So, any other new business? All righty. I need a motion to adjourn, Mr. Lejas.
I decline.
He declines. I'm gonna go with Mr. Hess on this one. Is there a second out there? Moving around. Moving around. All right, Mr. Lejas, a second. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed. Have a good day.